And Tom Nicanello is also watching, hopefully, to see what we're doing with our visioning.
It says you're streaming live, so congrats.
It's telling me we're setting up, so not quite there. Oh, it's frozen.
Are we zooming? That's a new verb now, huh?
Yeah. And Googling, and now it's in. Hang on one second. Let me try again.
The icons on my screen say it's recording and it's live.
I understood, but it's not. It's telling me it timed out, so hang on. I agree. It's telling me it's live on YouTube. Maybe it is, but the computer's telling me otherwise.
Chris, how's Lois doing?
She's well. She's doing really well. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm
She's
surprised
over
she
it.
hasn't kicked you out yet. There every day. My God.
What are you talking about?
I'm being facetious. My
Come
bride
on,
looked
she
at me and
loves
goes,
me.
my bride looks at me and says, "Are you still here?" And I said, "Yeah, the office is closed." And she's like, "Oh, all right." Okay.
Uh-huh.
All right, I'm having difficulty with the live stream. I'm not sure if it is or is not live streaming, but I think maybe we can just get started. The August 19th, 2020 meeting of the Yarmouth Planning Board is about to convene. As a precautionary measure to reduce the spread of the coronavirus, this meeting will be held by remote participation. My name is Kathy Williams, and I am the Yarmouth Town Planner and will be serving as moderator for this virtual meeting. I will now turn it over to the Planning Board Vice Chairman.
Good evening. Welcome to the August 19th meeting of the Planning Board for the Town of Yarmouth. My name is Joanne Crowley, and I'd like to begin by taking a roll call for quorum. Brad Goodwin,
Present.
Chris Vincent,
Present.
Liz Hartsgrove,
Present.
Susan Britta,
Present.
Tom Barron, Will Rubenstein, Joanne Crowley.
Present.
With the quorum present, I'll now call the meeting to order. I'm going to ask the moderator, Kathy Williams, to explain how the remote participation will work before proceeding.
Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, this meeting of the Yarmouth Planning Board is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access and participate in the proceedings as provided for in the order. Persons who would like to view this meeting while in progress may do so, hopefully by watching this virtual meeting or the live feed on the Town of Yarmouth YouTube channel. You may also listen to the meeting by dialing into the number provided on the notice of meeting. The meeting will also be posted on the Town of Yarmouth YouTube channel for future viewing. Please be patient as we work to overcome any technological challenges with the virtual meeting. For all meetings, all audience participants under the virtual meeting come in muted. Participants will be unmuted and called upon to speak by the chair or the moderator. If you are not speaking, please mute yourself to avoid unnecessary background noise. Please do not use speakerphone or Bluetooth devices when speaking, and all votes must be roll call votes. For applicants and presenters, there are no applications or presentations on the agenda for this evening, so I will not read that section. Public comment, although none of the items on the agenda this evening are public hearings that require a designated public comment period, public comments can be taken at the discretion of the chair. Members of the public may request to speak by selecting the raise hand button or *9 on their phone and waiting for the chair to call on them to speak. As an alternative to making comments via the online audio or phone, you may also submit comments to the moderator via the virtual meeting chat function. To do this, click on the chat icon and type your message. When prompted, the moderator will read comments and questions into the record. Members of the public recognized by the chair are asked to identify themselves by first and last name and affiliation for the public record, and then proceed to provide their comment. I will now hand the meeting back to the chairman or vice chairman.
Thank you, Kathy. Included in your board packets this evening are revised and updated documents related to our plans for visioning as part of our local comprehensive planning process. They incorporate our discussion from 2 weeks ago, August 5th. And these documents include the following in draft. One, the LCP visioning process that's been adapted for remote participation. A tentative implementation schedule for the visioning process. A detailed description of the public participation engagement plan. And then a detailed description for our review of the first community workshop format. Also included is a cover memo that Kathy had prepared for us to review that we would include in the selectmen's packet for their meeting next Tuesday. So those are the items we want to go through and get comments on and finalize. I think the outcome, Kathy, is to have the have some memo with attachments to be in the board packet for next Tuesday's meeting.
Correct. I'd need to submit that at tomorrow morning. Technically, it's noon on Wednesdays, but I've been given dispensation because we meet on Wednesday nights. But the idea is hopefully that we've captured kind of the discussion, the excellent discussion from a couple weeks ago and incorporated it into the documents. As Joanne mentioned, there is the draft memo that has been developed for consideration by the planning board that will go to the Board of Selectmen that kind of outlines what is going to be changing or what is being proposed to be changed to continue with the visioning during COVID-19. And a lot of it had to do with having those different types of virtual workshops and how we might be able to do it to mimic the in-person workshops to the maximum amount possible. I think in that memo, they talk about the pre-registration that would be required to kind of keep the groups to manageable levels, and then creating those breakout rooms with each planning board member kind of being in charge of a particular breakout room. And we can pre-assign those people to the breakout room depending on maybe some of the answers to the questions from the registration process. So we can kind of have more of a diverse group of people in each breakout room. We kind of did that with the MVP workshop, and I think that worked really good. So you didn't have all the same people with the same interests in one group saying the same things to each other. It kind of helps with the dialogue to have different mix of people. I think we need to have some specific meeting instructions that would need to go out because people are going to need to be sure that they have pad, paper and a pen and different materials available to them. We're going to need staffing. We'll probably need an extra person to serve as a general host who will be moving people in and out of the different breakout rooms, which is not complicated, but something else that we would need in addition to the moderator giving the initial overall presentation. And then, as I said, the planning board members would be the different facilitators within the individual breakout rooms. The thing that would also be a little bit different is even though we could talk about a little bit more as we go through the format for these virtual meetings, ultimately, I think each person is going to end up with their own little document that's going to have their comments on them that they need to send into the town. They could either mail that in, drop it off, or send it via our visioning@yarmouth.ma.us email address. I think what's being proposed kind of keeps the bulk of the visioning process that we had developed previously in place. It's just fitting in a modification to the one area that we were having difficulty with, which was the in-person meetings related to COVID, and making those virtual with some modifications. As Joanne mentioned, there's a draft of the visioning process outline that's been redlined for your viewing, and I think also be easier for the Board of Selectmen to leave it redlined. A lot of it has to do with adding some of the comments that were made from the last meeting, like maybe adding the QR codes and the public participation, and also having that kickoff information meeting to begin with for people to get a better understanding of what the process is going to be like. Kyle Pedicini also mentioned, maybe having some public service announcements filmed, briefly as we go through, just kind of updating people saying, oh, we had a great workshop, and, letting people know when the next ones are. And then we can blast that out through the Constant Contact and some of our other public engagements. And then the main difference here has to do with the first community workshop. and that there's actually a draft format that's been included in here for consideration by the board. I just wanted to get far enough along so that I could see how a virtual meeting might work. Not necessarily that we can't change it. Of course, we can always change things, and the particular questions and all those things can be changed a little bit. But I think the process, I just wanted to make sure that it was something that would be workable. The other thing that's included in here is a modified implementation schedule, trying to move forward. And that's certainly something that we can kind of go through. The idea was kind of moving things over and having our first workshops this fall, our second workshops in the spring, and then our third workshop next fall, kind of one season off from what we were kind of doing before. The public participation engagement plan did not change significantly. I think most of it is something that we can continue to utilize, and it's solid information. So I think I'm gonna cut off there and see how people feel on that, and we can certainly discuss the format later. But I think that might be the information. That amount of information would be what we might be presenting to the Board of Selectmen for discussion next Tuesday.
So any comments? Those are the memo we can maybe discuss last, but the process outline and the schedule, and then the engagement plan, the board has seen some form of this already, right, Kath?
Correct.
So I think it was a good idea to redline so they can see exactly what the differences are, makes it a quicker review. And for those of us who've already gone through this, it was a quicker review. But for those who you're somewhat new to, maybe Will and or Susan or anyone else, any comments? We can go through the process outline first, the adjustments that we made. On visioning process outline.
Susan has her hands up.
Yes, go ahead. Susan?
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
Just a couple comments. Is there any way we could do like a list that would outline what comes first, whether the survey comes first and then the workshop, and then so that the residents would have an idea of what the first steps are going to be? It's a very detailed process, and it's going to take a long time. I got the impression the survey comes first. Is that correct?
I think it's going to be slightly ahead of the workshops, but in conjunction. I think if you look at the implementation schedule, launching the surveys is like happening a little bit ahead of, and they could certainly happen exactly at the same time. I would recommend having them out for a good amount of time, like 30 or 60 days, to allow people, and again, peppering the public engagement process.
So if we had a chronological list of, survey, workshop, feedback, or whatever, so that we have an idea of how the steps are going to fall one after another, I think would be helpful. The other thing is, we talk about there's going to be a web page on the town's website. Could we give a little more detail on that, like an address, so that people can walk their way through the town website to get to the web page? We include the visioning at yarmouth.mass.us. Is that it, Kathy? Is that the link to the web page?
I'm sorry, where was it? It's very simple. So.
Page 1 of the visioning process outline on number 3, public participation. Down the
Yeah,
bottom,
no, I mean, I can put in parentheses what that actual website link is.
that would be great. I think
Yep,
that would be
that's a good
helpful.
idea.
That way people can click right on it.
If I may jump in there, Joanne,
Sure, Chris.
just to point out, hi, Susan, I don't think we've met before. I'm Chris. There is a page in here that has the implementation schedule. So that speaks to your first question. It's there in a table.
Right, but I was thinking, I saw the schedule, but I was thinking of a little more precision as to, what can the residents expect to see first? I think Kathy said she'd like to get the survey out first to at least get the ball rolling and engage, and then the follow-on steps. Or maybe they're concurrent, but it's a little confusing to me as to what exactly happens first, and then what's next, and then how do we build on each successive step? That's sort of what I'm looking at, because we talk about.
Again, I think it's shown in there. It says, the dates of the virtual first community workshop, the second community
Are
workshop.
you looking at
We have
the
those
one with the,
pretty well.
Yes,
That's
is
the
that
one.
the most, is that the most current one?
yes.
That hasn't changed at all then?
No, I've changed it. This has been
This is the
updated
change.
August 14th. And
Okay.
I would agree with Chris. I don't know what else I would do or.
I didn't realize this was the updated one. So
Yes,
this is the
yep.
current one. Okay.
Yes, correct.
All right. And then Kathy, one final thing. At the meeting last time, we mentioned was there any previous material that might be helpful to us? And you were going to see if you had any time to take a look at it. Was anything available that would be worth?
I checked in my office. I do not have a copy of the Bluestone Group proposal or their report. I did ask Karen Green. She said she thought she had one, but she's been on vacation. So
Okay.
I'm still looking into that.
Okay.
Sorry, Will, go ahead.
Thanks. One thing I think that might bridge what Susan was saying and what Chris was saying is on this handy colored implementation schedule, it's very helpful to see the bold items, because I think that's kind of what Susan's saying is like, how do we just distill this, let's just say, for people that aren't so involved in the process? And maybe a suggestion would be to bold on this implementation schedule when the surveys are going out. And then if you just pull those 4 bolded items out and their dates, then you kind of have a TLDR, here's how it's going to go, as opposed to a very complicated, like every single step of the process calendar. You have a more simplified calendar, which is what I think Susan was. And I agree with her. If you're just someone who wants to know what's going to happen in the next 18 months, you don't necessarily need to see this beautiful thing, but it would be super helpful to see the 4 bolded things. Does that make sense? That was not good English, but that's what I'm trying to say. The other thing was a question about the email address in the outline is who checks it, how is it checked, and how is it shared and with whom?
There's limited staff that has access to the visioning. I think there might be 3 of us in community development. It would be a case of like when anyone mails something to us, it would get compiled as comments as part of the survey, and those comments all get compiled and then hopefully sorted with the assistance of the consultant and you guys to kind of put it into different categories. But I'd like to think there will end up being a master list that would include all comments that we've received from people.
Right. And I hear what you're saying. I think what's going to happen is the more that we advertise this email address, the more it's going to get used. And the more you're going to get things that aren't comments. You're going to get questions. You're going to get, hey, what is the planning board doing? Or, hey, what's Kathy Williams doing? So I'm just trying to look ahead and say, how is that going to be shared if it's not comments? And we don't have to flesh that out right now, but it's something I think that's worth considering. And how and who is going to learn what is in the email. And then the last comment I have, Madam Chair, is on number 17 is I really like to know how Horsley Witten is doing, if this is the right time of the meeting, to know if they are capable of running the kinds of workshops that we need them to run now that we are looking at a more virtual process.
I can answer.
Good question.
Yeah, I
Beth,
can
on
answer
the
that if
Horsley
you'd
Witten?
like. Do you want me
Oh.
to answer, Joanne?
Yeah,
or-
on that Horsley Witten,
Yeah,
yes.
I've been in touch with
Definitely.
Nate Kelly, and they have been doing these types of remote participation with the different breakout groups, and that they're confident that they can assist us with that. I also did go online a little bit and do some research. It's not rocket science. I think it's kind of one of those, once you figure it out, and sometimes, what we've been doing here is, when we first started with the Zoom is we'll just have like 5 or 6 people go on a mock one, and we'll just move everybody around and kind of see what we can do to kind of fake one out and make sure that it works, so that we as staff are comfortable with it. And in addition to having the consultant, I don't ever like to rely on just one person. I like to know how all these things work myself. So
Great, thank you.
Question on the consultant. We town, you Kathy, haven't gotten actual changes to the consultant contract or anything, nothing in writing yet.
no, what I what I did was I sent him basically this packet that you guys have and said that we were meeting tonight and then we were going to go before the Board of Selectmen on Tuesday. And if everybody sounds like this sounds like a great plan, then we'll have him modify his scope of services. So he's all ready to go. He knows what the situation is and the timing and the different meetings that we're working on.
What sort of, with the consultant involved at any of these virtual general meetings with townspeople, how long are those sessions anticipated?
I think it can be, a little bit how long or short as you'd like it to be, but I would think it would probably be a couple hours in order to go through the whole thing. I think it's easier with the remote participation because somebody can start it and then they can think about it. I mean, like I said before, I had to think about my answers to some of the particular questions and things popped into my mind, a couple days later. And then I kind of added it to my own my own list of how I personally might want to answer some of the questions. So I think that helps. So I think instead of, giving a longer period of time for the breakout groups, maybe you have shorter times for the breakout groups.
According to the schedule, September, we're almost there. Almost all of the major items in that first, particularly the survey, the first block of items, almost all of this is going to happen within the next month.
It's extremely tight. The idea was to try and at least have some of these workshops before people kind of left the area. I mean, that was really the thinking with the in-person workshops. It becomes less of an issue, I think, maybe with the remote participation. Thank you, Brad. So as long as we get the words out and people know about it early enough, that the timing is a little bit less critical.
Given the issue of September as well, what about snowbirds? Are they given any opportunity to participate? I mean, I know we had talked about it before the COVID issues. Are we going to have any input from snowbirds?
I think the idea is to get the information out and to get them to the website and maybe get them onto Constant Contact earlier rather than later. So they're already signed up and they know when this, they'll get the blast when the survey comes out, or they'll get the blast when when the workshops registration is available.
Well, they can always do remote from wherever they're going to wander off to.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Susan?
Kathy, one of the things you mentioned last week was maybe tapping into associations and the chamber and those kinds of groups. Regarding Tom's comment about snowbirds, I sent an email out to the associations along Lewis Bay, and they're prepared whenever the board is ready to send information out, they in turn will send it out to all of their members, which I think captured Tom's snowbird concern, because a lot of these people do go away. But if we get the information out early enough, they can certainly have a web address or a phone number or a person's name or an email address that they can participate, even if they're down in Florida.
Yeah.
So I always like the idea of really using the associations as a support group for us, because they have instant access to all their members. So I think that will work very well.
We typically do that. We send out and ask certain, hopefully if we happen to know who the new presidents are of the different groups, to forward it around to their membership, and it's been very helpful. Yeah.
Anyone else?
Can I just ask one last question about the survey? Kathy, do people sign the survey or is it anonymous?
That's something that's kind of up to you whether you even want to leave a block, but sometimes you can say, here's, fill in your name and where you live if you want to,
Okay.
or not. We haven't quite gotten to that detail. Yet.
Okay.
But typically, sometimes people are fine giving their names and sometimes people want to be anonymous.
If people give their names, do we have any obligation to protect their privacy, or is that given once they sign the public survey? Is that, I just don't want to get ourselves into a position where we're divulging someone's comments and, they say, oh, I put it on the survey and I didn't think, Susan was going to say my name.
That's interesting. I've never really run into that situation before. I don't know if you have, Liz, where that someone's name was on a survey that they then got out to the public.
We tend to not put required names, but we just mark if they're residents or non-residents, and we go on the honor system. Only because if you require a name, you're not going to get as much
I
participation.
agree.
So,
I wouldn't require it. Sometimes we've left, if you want to, if you want to be contacted, but I
Yeah.
think with us, typically we'll just be saying, please sign up to the constant contact and that type of thing. So,
Yeah, you leave it optional or something like that.
yeah. Or like you say, I mean, we're obviously going to ask certain demographic things, like maybe even like where you live, Yarmouth, Port, West Yarmouth, South
Yeah.
Yarmouth, and that type of thing, resident, year round, resident, those types of general questions.
Okay.
Just to, can I jump in for a sec, Madam Chairman? Madam Vice Chair, I apologize. As clerk at St. Mary's for 7 years, try to walk the legal line. If this is an actual virtual, non-virtual meeting, somebody would have to stand up and say where they lived, or at least precinct. So I would hope on the survey that we at least get their location. Doesn't have to be street, but West, as Kathy just said, West Yarmouth, Yarmouth Port,
Mhm.
something to give some flavor to what is Yarmouth. That's all. The second question I have is, with this virtual time frame we're all in, deadlines have become more fluid and time of day has become more fluid. I had a meeting this morning at 7 a.m. and it didn't affect me as much as it normally did, because normally, yes, I shaved and showered, put on a tie, but I didn't have to drive anywhere. So we probably could have some time frames outside the usual block of Yarmouth Planning Board at 5:30. Just an idea.
Oh, we definitely would. I think we would want to pepper it at different times and different days of the week and that type of thing, so that if someone always has something on Wednesdays at 5:30, they're not going to miss out on these 3 different workshop options if they want to do it that way. So that's a great idea, Brad.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I have a
Yeah,
couple
Liz.
of things. Piggybacking on Susan and Will, as far as the schedule, I do agree that the public participation section, Kathy, should be highlighted in some fashion. Either it should be color coded or even shape coded. Some people are color blind, so you have to be careful with the colors. And so shaping the section in the graph some fashion, and you can make it vertical versus horizontal, and do it year by year, or a section of what's the remainder of 2020 and public participation, and highlighting it in some fashion. So then people can prepare ahead of time for where they want to participate and how they want to participate.
I'm afraid I'm not following what.
I will talk
comment.
offline with you on that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate
So,
that.
and then I know I would like to at least get a sense of next week when you're presenting this to the selectmen. How are you going to present this? In what format? And so, yeah, I'd like a little info on that, please.
And Kathy, do you want us to participate next week also when you present this, or is it, do you want us to sign on to the meeting or not?
It's in person. The Board of Selectmen has been meeting in person.
Ah.
And typically when it's something like this with the planning board, it's usually the chairman, or in this case, vice chairman, and I would sit at the table, and it just kind of
Okay,
wouldn't be very complicated. It would be going through the memo and some of the highlights, almost as I did at the beginning of the meeting, of the changes and what we're doing to modify the plan to
Okay.
COVID-19, but also identifying that we're keeping a lot of the information the same.
so you don't necessarily need us to zoom in on that meeting?
Well, I don't think you can zoom in or do that. You could watch it
It's
on
not, it's
on
not
channel
public?
18. It's limited to 25 people in the hearing room. That includes the board members as well. So sometimes we've had to wait out in the hall until something got finished, and then they left, and then we could go back,
Okay.
go in. So I think I'll leave it to Joanne, but it's usually up to you guys as to whether you want to be there or not. But Joanne and I will definitely be there.
And in answer to your question, Liz, I think, as I mentioned before, I wanted to leave the memo discussion and comments on that. That is the product that we intend to have in front of the board, with whatever attachments we think are most important. Kathy has already indicated to me her preference not to have the last one, the full script for the community workshop. They don't need that. But perhaps the first three, in terms of the outline of the whole process, a schedule, and then boom, what's the public engagement plan? So those were the three attachments we thought would go with the memo. And there would be no presentation materials per se, other than they would have that, give a brief overview verbally, answer questions. We think the one thing that they probably will come back at, having, worked with the board before, is what? This is going to take a year? This is going to take 14 months? So Kathy and I have talked about, is there wiggle room in that schedule? Did we give ourselves some room to compress if we have to? If there's some sense of urgency that things need to be done at a quicker pace? There's some, not too much, but we're anticipating that that will probably be some level of appreciation. We'll have to move forward with them so that they'll understand that this process does take time and that it is a step-by-step. It is sequential. You can't jump over things. It's a bit on a critical path and you've got to kind of follow where you're going. So that's essentially 5 minutes in front of the Board of Selectmen. You asked us to revise the plan. We've introduced remote. That's what we were thinking, but your input and your thoughts on it help shape it. Yeah,
No, that sounds good. Thank you.
yeah, Susan.
If 6 months from now or 7 months from now, we get sort of back to normal and we can actually have in-person meetings and do it the way we originally, I assume that this plan, and you would say to the Board of Selectmen, we still retain the right, if we can meet in person, to go back to the original plan and try to get the human dynamic associated with this. I assume, I don't know, maybe you have to say it outright to them, but I'm hoping maybe, starting in January, we could have 1 or 2 meetings with actual people as opposed to, I don't know. But if it occurs, I would like the board certainly to retain the right to roll it back and do it the way we originally planned, or at least you all originally planned it, which I think is a lot more effective.
That's a very good point, because I think anyone who's in education these days know that, yeah, we start out and we say, yep, the residence halls at colleges, we're going to fill them up. And then the next day, no, we're not. And then the day after that, yes, we are. So I think this plan, as Kathy's worked it beautifully, in the sense that I think we will be able to pivot back and forth because we now have a remote set and we have the in-person set. Kathy, do you agree, or?
Yeah, under the second community workshops and the third, it says virtual or in person if feasible. So I think that's always leaving that option open.
No, good point though. Okay, and let's just take a minute and focus on the memo, because that is that's the newest part to the board. The rest of the piece is merely revisions, and I think Kathy just took a broad view of what the key points are. I didn't see anything she missed, but any comments from anyone on additions or deletions? Too much, too little?
Yeah, Kathy, on the pre-registration piece, how do you, if the board asks how is that going to work, do we have some idea of how it is going to work? Pre-registration, is that going to be online? Can they walk into town hall? Can
No,
they call you?
Zoom allows you to pre-register. So we will be getting the pre-registration
Okay.
that way.
And they can, I assume they could call you, they could call anyone with the planning board, they could walk into town hall if they wanted to.
They can, but I think they would need to be directed to doing the registration online.
So you want it done online, that would be the
It's going to
preference.
have to be so that we have the list of the people. And again, there's the questions that we can ask them, like, where we can ask them, where do you live? What are your interests?
Right.
Do you have
Okay.
any other affiliations? So we can kind of group people together that way.
Okay,
Yeah, Tom?
Working on the same comment, pre-registration, where is this going to happen? How is it going to happen? Who's doing it? If it's gonna have to be online, we're gonna have to set up new Zoom sessions just for registration.
You'll have to set up the Zoom for the actual workshop, so we'll have to figure out when we want to have the workshop, and then people can register. I hope there's a limitation that we can set on the registration, so once you get to a certain number, people will be getting a kickback saying, you know, we've maxed out on the registration for this particular one, and then there's other, you know,
All
look
right.
for other ones, so.
All right, I just didn't see it. All right, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get into super detail, but I think that there's enough flexibility with Zoom to be able to do these things.
Thank you.
Yeah, Will?
It's always about the money, right? So there's nothing in here about the 20,000, and has it been spent? Has it been signed off on? What are our intentions with the 20,000? And I'm only saying it because I wasn't here, so I'm dumb, so I get to ask questions. And if I was a select board, I would like to know what's happening with the money. And so I think you should, since we're trying to anticipate reasonable questions,
Yep.
it may not hurt to put a sentence or two. I might have missed it. That could just inoculate, if you will, because otherwise you'll just open yourself up to questions. And Brad's shaking his head, so maybe that's not a good idea. Who knows? But
It is a good idea.
oh, thank you, Tom.
The
It is a
process,
good idea.
I was laughing about inoculate. I'm sorry.
Well, I've used that way before COVID, so I'm gonna keep it. Go ahead, Kathy. Sorry.
yeah, that's fine. Under consultant assistance, it does identify the funds, and it says modifications to the original proposed scope of services will be needed to accommodate changes. to
I'm
the
sorry,
plan.
Kathy. I meant in the memo because
Yeah.
again, you know, people don't read. So if you're going to give them a memo and sort of emphasize that they at least read the memo, then I would suggest that we put a sentence or two in there that you and Joanne feel comfortable with. Just assume, again, it's how we do things in our business. We assume that people don't read. They just don't. And so if you're going to give them one thing to read, at least make sure you're hitting the things that you want them to know about.
Sounds good.
that's just my opinion.
In my previous life up in Boston, if you were proposing something and you didn't put a price tag on it that everyone could understand, your chances of getting your project through and getting it funded after the fact was not there. The fact that we have an allocation of 20K, it should be clearly stated even to the select board so that everyone knows where we're coming from.
And Tom, just to put it in perspective, we understand that the town is making needed cuts and certain sets of decisions based on some revenue numbers that maybe even not all of us are aware of from the second quarter. And so we're not being glib about the fact that we do have the allocation, but we're also not giving it up.
No, that's
So
for sure.
again, that's why I feel like it's very important to restate what is respectfully ours.
Yeah, just to go off on a little tangent here, as far as finances, you were right. We saw the selectmen and we saw the overall budget being trimmed because of COVID issues, and we had to clear out the current fiscal year, you know, in a positive way. And some of the decisions that were made to defer expenses on this fiscal are going to be carried over into the next fiscal. And one of the speculations was the uncertainty of how the tourist season was going to work out. Well, I think anyone with an astute observation would say that we've had a pretty doggone good tourist season, so our revenue issues may not be as dire as had been predicted early in the spring. So that's my tangent. So I just throw that out.
The Board of Selectmen is going to be looking at, I think in their first meeting in October, to talk about free cash grants and maybe adding in, seeing how we did last year and how we did for the first quarter of the fiscal year, to see if we could even add in some of those capital projects that I know Joanne worked so hard on to get them back into the budget. So hopefully there'll be more information at the beginning of October about that.
Madam Vice Chair,
Yes.
just a quick update. This is going to be my second or third visioning process. And I'm just smiling because the pressure is going to come down on Kathy first, and then the planning board second. The selectmen third, because it's going to be like steering an oil barge. Stopping an oil barge and turning an oil barge takes miles. So I respect all the effort we're going to go through because all of you and me are going to be under the gun, and Kathy more than that. The selectmen and the selectmen after this are the ones who are going to be reacting to this. And they haven't done much in the last two visioning statements. So I don't want to have you guys kill yourself on this. But on the other hand, all of us are going to be under the pressure more than the selectmen. So let's make it a win-win for the town citizens and the board here, so we can present a small, compact document to the selectmen. I'm glad this is being taped, so I'm not speaking out of line. But, well, whatever, I'll leave it at that. I just want you to know that this is a good overview, but nothing's going to happen right away. But you're all going to be under the gun because we're all going to be sitting in on these meetings, and I respect your free time you're donating. And most of you have free time you cannot donate. So I hope the time works for all of us and we all take good notes. But again, Kathy's under the gun the most, and then us.
You're scaring me, Brad.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
I do.
Okay, so I apologize. And then Nate, we've worked with. Chris remembers Nate. Nate worked with us on the VCOD. He's very user-friendly, great face, great personality, hard worker. He'll help us out as much as he can for the 20K. But again, it all comes down to you. It's the volunteers sitting here on this screen right now are going to do most of the work. And then we're going to funnel it to Kathy. So please think of yourselves as well as the town, because none of you are getting paid and none of this information is going to be used in the immediate future. I apologize, but that's true.
In other words, Brad, what you're saying is KISS principle. Keep it simple.
You forgot this. You forgot the stupid part. It's two
I-
S's, Tom.
Well, I'm
going to say it then.
Avoided that deliberately.
No, but he knows it's not personal. Keep it simple, stupid. Not you, Brad. Everyone, others.
I kind of like to keep it simple, smarty pants.
There you go.
Anyway, good comments. Thank you, Brad, for that. Quite frankly, as one of the senior members on the board, your history and your guidance is going to be critical to me and to the rest of the board. So your candor is welcome, and your messaging to us is loud and clear. So thank you. Thank you very much. So I think we're good for the selectmen next week. I'll be there with Kathy. If any of you want to come, please do. It'll be interesting to see what they have to say. I think there's only 4 of them, and all 4 have seen it, right, Kathy? Right, all 4 of these have, yeah. Mark was here, yeah. So it's not news to them. So
I think they'll be fairly favorable and want to move forward.
Yeah.
I think I love to keep it simple, and I appreciate Brad's comments very much, because we can analyze the process to death and then never actually get to anything. Let's just get started. If
Let's
we
do
need
it.
to modify some things as we go along, we can certainly do
Yeah.
that. It doesn't need to be perfect. I think we have a really good plan and a good start, and then we'll go with it, and then we'll modify as we need to.
okay. All right, thank you on that. Our next order of business are the minutes from our last meeting.
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you.
Sorry, Joanne.
A second?
Second,
Tom? We need to do roll call again. Brad Goodwin,
Approve.
Chris?
Yes.
He's
You have to
muted. I think he has to abstain, yeah. Liz?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Tom?
aye.
Will?
Aye.
Joanne? Aye. Okay. So, Kath, Board of Appeals,
Um, Great Island Plaza went before the ZBA last week. I think they were generally overall supportive of the finished project, the final. They had some questions and concerns about the proposed phasing. They wanted to see the improvements of the buffer and reduction in on and parking in the front as part of the phase one. And the applicant is working on that, and they're going to be going back before the Zoning Board of Appeals on the 27th. And I very much hope and anticipate that it will be approved. They'll have some conditions, but I'm hoping that it will be approved on that day. And then she'll finish up her financing, and then she'll start redeveloping the Great Island Plaza.
That include the building the other side of the post office?
She already has no, I think she's going to do the plaza first before she does that building. And then she'll start getting that, some rent
If
from that.
if I remember, ZBA was questioning the second story issues with the proposed revised plan there.
The other one, they've already given their special permit. That's all ready to go from last November. So she could start on that, right away if she wanted to. But I think COVID kind of gave her a little bit of a glitch, as it did everybody. So she's really then kind of been concentrating on getting the permitting and everything set for the plaza.
Be good to see something happen there.
Yeah.
okay, committee updates from board members? Any
I have
committee
nothing.
reports, Tom?
I have nothing.
I have one. I attended on August 6th, Community and Economic Development. And Great Island Plaza was an agenda item on that as well, as it relates to a Massachusetts tax incentive program for tenants, not the developer, for tenants. It's called the Vacant Storefront Program. We had just a brief overview of it, and we talked a bit about what the program is. And in fact, Haya from the Great Island Plaza joined us. She wanted to understand more about the program. So we have scheduled again another on an agenda to talk more about what that program is and how our committee might move forward with getting the word out on that. We also talked about, Tom, you talked about the Tourism Revenue Fund, Preservation Fund. The revenues that we have now, we now know what our amount is through June 30th, maybe close to being an audited amount. That allocation is known to us. However, our plans for this year changed because there were events that couldn't take place, like the Seaside Festival, as an example. So those funding allocations, if you will, have moved back into the plan. And with tourism revenue funds, we are allowed to do rollovers. It isn't that it's exhausted at the end of the year. So we're building up a little bit of a bank, which will be helpful for when the audit comes in June 30th, 2021. And it might not be so good. We'll have some reserves, hopefully. We're also trying to work with what the special events program might look like now. It will be different. It's not going to be parades. It's not going to be the Seaside Festival. It's not going to be concerts at the new church on 6A. So we're working on that as well. We were asked to comment on the.
Talking about Seaside, we're talking the first weekend generally in October.
That is correct.
So we're looking at least 6 weeks or more away. Where would be a drop dead date where that decision would be made, where Seaside wouldn't go forward?
I don't know. They make that decision. They've already reduced their plan already in terms of parade, I believe. So we're waiting to hear from them. I think through the town, they have to go through some permitting process as
Yeah.
anybody else.
All right,
And
thank you.
it's a kind of a wait and see. But
Yeah.
I think for most events that have been supported, there's been some rollback because they didn't take place at all, or that there was a commitment that they couldn't keep.
Tom, right now, at least, we're limited, special events are limited to 50 people. And then that also includes the people that are the volunteers and the organizers in total. So when you add all of the food vendors, the retail, all of that.
I can
it
understand that, Liz.
Yeah.
But all I'm saying is that in 6 weeks, there may be further limits from the state, opening up some of those limits so that things are more flexible, more fluid, more in line with what we would normally try to expect for some of
I
these.
understand that part, but I was going to continue in saying that when you put together such a large event like that, it takes so much prep time in advance that you cannot just plan for 50 people event and then blossom it to 1,000-person event, because all of your vendors are scheduled in advance, and
Well,
they
that's true.
are looking for where to go in Rhode Island or to New Hampshire or to other places. So that's what I'm just
That was
giving you a
basically the
bigger
subject.
picture of what it
That was
takes.
basically the subject of my comment. What would be the cutoff date, the deadline date to make that decision?
And it's up to them. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's up to
yeah.
them.
Okay, thank you.
I just looked on their website and it says, due to current COVID-19 concerns, the parade and field event, including the craft show, have been canceled.
Okay.
And
I
that's
knew
the
parade
bulk
had
of
been-
everything that they do.
Yeah.
So
That's the
That's
best
the
of
bulk
it.
That's
of it.
essentially it.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the month, it started with the parade. So, I think those were the highlights from the Community and Economic Development Committee for me. So next, board member items. I don't know, my screen is getting a little crazy here.
if I could just give an update on CPA, they're having a meeting tomorrow to just kind of review what they might have for applications, possibly on the fall town meeting. I mean, they have applications that were pushed off to the fall town meeting. So they're going to be taking a look at that and deciding what they're going to do. So hopefully we'll have some more information on that.
I think we
When-
lost
when-
Joe for a sec.
We can still hear you, Joanne. So
Oh, okay, sorry.
There we go.
Yeah,
Kath, when, could you just repeat again the CPA?
yes, CPA is going to meet, the Community Preservation Committee, CPC is going to meet tomorrow just to kind of review what applications they already have in the hopper and kind of talk about what they're going to do for the fall town meeting. So
Okay.
we'll know more after that meeting as to what
Yeah.
might be happening in CPA. Because Tom Roach is the CPA rep for planning board. He usually updates you.
Kathy, any update on the DPW building? We go by it and we see lots of steel going up. It seems to be good progress. How's that overall schedule shaping up?
I think the schedule seems to be going very well. They ran into some snafu with the steel manufacturing firm that kind of put a little bit of a delay of a couple weeks, but they have plenty of other stuff that they can work on because it's one of the other buildings. So it seems to be going fairly well.
Any chance that they're going to be undercover by snowfly?
I don't know the exact schedule on that, other than that Jeff Colby gives us an update periodically and it seems to be on schedule.
Thank you.
Anyone else on board items? Okay. Kath, correspondence?
Just the kind of miscellaneous minor stuff I've been sending to you, nothing major.
I noticed you sent out the Conservation Commission yesterday or the day before.
Mhm.
That's quite a packed calendar.
They're
That-
busy beavers. Holy
That's-
guacamole.
Yeah, is that
Yeah.
because they have been unable to meet, or it just?
No,
it's
they
all
have been
happening right
meeting
now?
aggressively. They were the first committee to meet in the town of Yarmouth after COVID started. I think I found it a little bit too. We've had two of the major projects, the Irish Village and Great Island Plaza, go through design review and permitting during COVID. And other people are actually seeing a lot of pickup in permits and applications. It sounds like Liz is having something similar in Barnstable. It's the opposite of what you would think it would be, but yes, they've been busy from day one. They also have a lot of certificate of compliances for people who have been like kind of waiting for a lull a little bit, and then they finally got their consultant to put it all together. So she's had some of that, but she's been Kelly Grant's been extremely busy, and she was very helpful in kind of setting up the whole Zoom thing and kind of teaching all the rest of us how to make it work. So she's done a great job.
Right. Okay, and any other staff updates, Kath?
No, I've been talking about Great Island Plaza and then the Board of Selectmen meetings in person. That's all I had on my list.
Okay. Our next meeting, September
Second,
3rd?
second.
Right, second, it's first is a Tuesday.
One dumb question, Madam Chairman,
Yes,
through you to Kathy. Town meeting, October?
yeah,
November 17th is the date that's being thrown around.
Okay, thank you.
There was some discussion if some things don't quite work, maybe moving it to the very beginning of December after Thanksgiving. But right now, it's tentatively November 7th.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
welcome.
Madam Chair, a question.
Sure.
You mentioned that in September we would take a look at planning board committee assignments,
Yes,
and I was hoping Kathy was kind enough in our little orientation to give me a very cool chart that showed the different assignments and those that are and all that good stuff, and we just wanted to make sure that there were no other surprises that you are aware of, that there are other committees that we're also responsible to staff. And is this a conversation for the early part of the month, or do you feel it would be more towards the end of the month?
I looked at our rules and regulations, and it says the third, on or about the third Wednesday of the month. So it'll be up.
Oh,
If
okay.
Brad's
It'll be
like,
the
yeah,
second.
it's always the second meeting. So
yeah,
I think it's gonna, just to keep things normal, it'll be the second. And in the packet for that, when we do the officers, I will also include that chart in there so everyone can see.
yeah. There'll be complete, complete transparency as to what the committee is, where we are assigned. We actually have an assignment, and who's currently holding it, and whether or not they would continue. I use myself as an example. I'm on 2. I'm not going to be on 2. And then an expressed interest by all of you as to which ones you would like, as well as positions on the board. So it's meant to be a wide open, kind of transparent process that we decide how we run ourselves and what committees we
Right.
participate on.
Okay, great. Well, we'll do that in a month then.
If you're not sure about what different committees do, I would strongly recommend going on the town website and looking at the 2019 annual report. You'll get an idea what they did last year, and kind of usually they kind of give a brief overview of what their charge is.
Madam
Okay.
Chair,
Yes,
can I ask a favor through you to Kathy?
you may.
Kath, if you could send out a list of who's on what committee.
Okay.
And then if he or she is what their end of their term is, all I'm saying is, I'm trying to get to you guys, if you want to volunteer for any of one of the committees, just respond to Kathy and don't hit respond all,
Yeah,
please,
yep,
or we're going to be in big trouble. And the second thing is, if you could all be on the call for the second planning board meeting of September, because I have seen planning boards continued without votes if even one of us is missing. So if you could all be on that call in September when we assign officers and committee selections, it would be appreciated. Because sometimes it gets into a cluster, you know what, because one person says we're not all here and we usually acquiesce to that person. Okay, I apologize,
No,
but
good advice, Brad. Thank you for
No.
that history lesson.
no, I'm sorry. I got one more year and then you get rid of me in June.
No, we're not, we're not
There we
letting you go.
Bye.
We're hanging on to you for life. We're just, you can't go. We won't let you.
Yeah, so Kath, we have a matrix or a list that.
Yeah, I can send that out.
Yeah,
Yep.
that can be part of our packet, maybe even for.
I can do it earlier. I can do
Yeah,
it
and we can
tonight
think
if you want.
about it.
I'll just send it to everybody and then you'll have it. So.
Yeah, and then.
And I'll insert it in the packet too.
Yeah, and then I think if everybody expresses an interest as to what they might like to participate in, we get that out in the open and we'll spend some time at that second meeting in September.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome, Will. Okay. I think that's it for this evening. May I have a motion to close the meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Tom. A second?
Okay.
Thank you. The August 19th, 2020 meeting of the Planning Board is now closed. Thank you all.
Do we have to take a roll call?
Yes.
We do. Thank you. Thank you. Will,
Aye.
Liz,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Susan,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Brad,
Aye.
Joanne, aye. Thank you.
The ayes have it.
You guys have it. Thanks very much.
Thank you,
fun at the
everybody.
Good night.
have fun at the select board. I'll be watching
All
in
right.
glory, in glorious non-HD. I will be watching.
Good questions, Will. Good
Thanks very
questions,
much,
Sue.
Oh,
everybody.
thanks.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Joanne.
Yep,
Thank
bye
you.
now.
Joanne and
Thanks,
Kathy.
Joanne.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Kathy.
Good night.